Most videos, including ours, show you how to pick the best city or to pick the best hotspot. Today, I'm gonna do something a little bit different. I'm gonna show you the final step. Final step being, how do you pick the best street in the location that you are in? Now, as you can see, we're in a different little location here. We're actually at a town, one of the towns that we've started investing in. So I'm gonna show you exactly how we go about picking the best street in this entire city.
The ugly duckling syndrome. This is probably one of the most important parts when you're buying an investment property. Now, it's great to always buy a new home because of low maintenance and nothing to really do to the property. But the problem is, you can see this area here. This is one of the suburbs that we're buying in, and this is like a new estate part of the suburb. There's not a whole lot going on here, but there's a lot of new properties. Now, these new properties here are probably worth 650, 700K to get into the market here. Very strong rental return. But as you can see here with these properties is that you can't increase any more value. So the way for these properties to go in value is only by supply versus demand. And if there's issue of supply in the area, of course the property prices will start to go up if there is a demand for it. And if there isn't really a demand, then they kind of stay stable. But there is another location which we'll take you to that is the same suburb down the road, which is the old part of town. Some of these properties in that street are worth 700 as well, 750K, and some of the old properties are worth 500 grand or less. So you can actually ride that wave of capital growth by increasing value by doing renovations and things like that. Or of course, if there's a supply versus demand ratio where of course there's more demand in the area, then those prices will naturally grow in value. But it's always giving you that second option to add value to that property when the market does start to slow down. So this is very important using the ugly duckling syndrome. It's great to have a property in these new estates, but once again, you just can't add any value, and you kind of, you're limiting yourself on what you can do to that property. Another thing that we're going to look at is overlays. Okay, there's so many different types of overlays, from bushfire, flood, zonings, as well as sewage lines and easements and things like that as well. That helps us mitigate the risk. Why? Because if you're going to buy the property, you don't want to be in a flood zone. Next thing you know, your insurance premiums are through the roof. Or not the stat, if you want to build on the property and it's got sewage lines or easements running through the property, you're very restricted. So we look at all these things. Now, we use this program called Home Snoop. You can also use an LGA council tool, which we do use also, which gives a little bit more features if you want to go more in depth. But this report will kind of walk us through the property itself, but more importantly, some of the things here. So this tells us what type of density this is, so it's just general residential for this area. Okay, there's other things like here, easements. There's no easement line on this property. If there was, there'll be a yellow line running for the property. Heritage listed, same thing again. There's, of course, if it's heritage listed, you're very limited to what you can do with the property, knock down or rebuild, things like that. Building heights, if you want to build multi-level stories, as well as lot sizes, as well as flood zones. As we can see here, this property is not in a flood zone. If it was, it'll be some sort of level of there's a legend here with the different colors, and one of the colors will be on the screen. And then also as well, key sites, and then future residential developments as well. And then there's of course land contours, so showing us if the land is flat or if it's elevated and it's on a slope. If that's the case, of course it's going to make it very hard to develop on it. Acid sulfate, this is probably more inclined towards Queensland properties, where the soil is a little bit looser, and then of course when it comes to developing, the foundations need a bit more structure. So yeah, that's some of the things here that we use to help us identify overlays.
You don't want to be buying an asset on an extremely busy road. You can hear this from your kitchen.
Another thing that we'll look out for is public housing. We don't want to be in an area where there's high supply of public housing. Reason why is because house prices will be a little bit lower than the general area. Okay, and that's okay. You probably pick up a house that's very affordable, but when you go to get a tenant, of course, sometimes it's not going to be the best tenant, and that tenant can cost you more headaches. So it's not really worth buying a cheaper property. So the way we look at this is there's two sites. We use microburbs. Once again, they've got the free version, but it tells us here the public housing in this area is 5% generally. Where the property is located, it's 0%. Or Home Snoop, once again, they have their own public housing here as well. And once again, it's give us indication 0% as well where this property is located. You don't want an area that has more than, say, for the whole area, okay, more than 15% in that street as well. You're probably looking at 10, 15%, and that changes. And you just got to understand as well the public housing. There's some areas that have public housing that are for people that are working as teachers or work in the hospital, and the government will give them an incentive. So that public housing is not too bad. But if it's the public housing that is for people that you could say that for the low demographic that can't afford, to own a home, and the government have to subsidise that, that level of public housing you have to be aware of, and that's a bit of a concern too. So you can understand that by, if you know the region, if you know locals on the ground, or if you go through the streets and you can kind of identify those pockets, and you can tell by the houses, you know, where the rough areas are, or where the more polished areas are. Buying in established areas is very important. Now we're in one of the other suburbs here in this LGA, and as you can see down the end of the road, there is a new lot that's getting built, and they're going to, you know, bring out more lots to the market. But the problem is that there's an oversupply of property risk here. So in those established areas, you just can't knock down a piece of land or a farm and build more properties, and that can affect your supply versus demand ratio. You want to make sure that there's only supply on the market is what there is and what people are selling at that point in time in those established areas. And if there's demand, you'll start to see that the listing starting to drop because there's a massive lot getting finished, and there's all these new properties coming onto the market for sale. That's just too much risk, and so we try to avoid that risk, just buying in the supply versus demand areas, which are established areas. So as you can see, we're in the old part of the town now where it's all established. You've got the old houses behind us, just down there also. And so this is a street where there's some really nice properties, and the houses range around 500 grand, 400 grand, around there. If not, and they range up to 750 as well. And so you can, you know, put some value into the property, add the value in, and then get that value out of it, because, you know, you're not not overspending, I should say, on that. So if you put $1 in, you're getting $2 out. And so that's quite important when you're buying in these areas. And not to say it's not oversupply of property where there's a subdivision going on, and they're gonna knock down all these farms and build all more lots. Okay, so that's a good thing. And then you got the town that's just literally at the end of the street there, where it's all the amenities. There's shops, hospitals, there's a university down there as well, where then if you buy in those new estates, it's further out. Okay, and over time this is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and of course being in those areas that are close to those amenities is most important. So here's a location that is away from the busy streets, the busy roads. Okay, and it's an established area. In this area, or in this pocket I should say, 24% of houses are to renters, so very dominant to owner occupiers, meaning that owner occupiers are going to push up property prices. One, they look after their houses, and two, of course, when someone wants to upgrade their home, they want to move to an area that's dominated by owner occupiers, just because it's much more appealing. So this is the type of areas that we want to source for and look out for using microburbs, or there's even the home snoop that we use as well, and that can help you allocate these locations.
And that's it. That's our process to going about finding the best street in a location, not just the location itself, but even going even deeper in the best street. If you do want to go and check out another video, something will pop up around this screen. Click on that, and as always, to your success.